Okay.
Only when I wake up in the morning, they gave you clothes.
Oh, the new folder, you check, I go to check my retina every year.
I had leave it.
Oh, to fix it?
Yeah.
Fix something?
Yeah, they took care of it all right? When you went Friday, no? Didn't you go this past Friday?
Tomorrow morning.
Oh, tomorrow.
But the retina I had years ago, but I get a check now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second cataract tomorrow, and then I'll be able to see better
Well,
after the
so
patch
the
comes off.
eyes, and then you get the ears done, and then
Yes. I look so forward to that.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
okay.
Have I agreed?
Yes.
If we have a meeting tomorrow, I'd like to say, you know, cottage job on, I guess that's my grandma.
Sure. Well, we've got, yeah.
Huh?
Tomorrow? Yeah, I'll be all set for my father.
Mhm.
You said cottage.
Uh,
I'm not
we-
doubting you, just
We've got 7. I'm not sure how many.
if there's
I
not,
put-
there's not.
Well, no, but I'm saying, as far as I know, there are people coming back today from being, that are part of the Daf Yomi that could very well be present tomorrow morning. I think Irwin is coming back today. I think Marty Engel is coming back today. So that's 2 more. Okay.
Michael?
I'm not sure.
No, Mike will be back Wednesday.
No, it takes him a little, he's
He'll be back
driving.
Wednesday.
He's driving, so it takes him a little longer.
Okay.
Actually, there's 8 of us this morning. So that's why I said if there's 8 now, and if
Wednesday,
the,
I'm here till Wednesday morning.
and if the 2 of them come back tomorrow and are in DAF, then we'll have it. Okay,
You going to this funeral, Rabbi?
not till after Shavuos. I gotta move to Yarmouth first.
All right. And I'm up and down them out.
Ah, ah. I asked my wife about having company for last days or Shabbos. She says, with all these boxes? I said, people will understand we're moving, that's all. Okay, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. Okay, a year of learning Isaac and Evelyn Blockmore in memory of the sister. Kaya Rachel Bas Isser, friends of Leonie Meisman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanak Zundel, friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir. A month of learning, friends and students of Rabbi Sholem Kornblum, Rav Sholem Ben Mordechai, Aaron and Mel Haller in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer Ben Tzvi Hirsch, Mark Scher in memory of his father, Mordechai Ben Menachem Manish, Mark Linder in memory of his nephew, Eretz Paul Ben Sulas, Susan and Ron Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Bunam Ben Yeshua, Michael and Judith Poretsky in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Avram. A week of learning, Judy Iger in memory of her husband, Aaron Ben Shlomo Michael. Judy Iger again in memory of her son, Anshel Yitzchak Ben Aharon. Today being the 16th of April. Okay, we have one day of learning by Nina and Steve Levine. Okay, in memory of her father, Yisrael ben Shmuel. Okay. And Shemus have an aliyah, crank Rafiel Velti Yeshir Shematzliah, and Chol B'nai Israel a good Gaben Shnia.
Amen.
Okay. All right. I don't think Steve is on the Zoom call today. They should be flying to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, there.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so if I want to do just a very quick review, okay, of what transpired yesterday in the Gemara, we spent a lot of time looking at the Chumash in the Shira. First, what would you say, 10, 15 minutes maybe, going over the section in Bamidbar, okay, because it discussed what is written as opposed to what's not written. And basically, I pointed out in very brief that there were sections that were, parts of the section were directions, and parts were basically what might be called verse Pasuk 19. I called it a warning, okay, but the Gemara really talks about oath and curse, right? Oath and curse, okay? All right, and so, and there was a machloket there in the Mishnah, and they discussed that, and then they went on. And at that point, towards the end of that Amud, okay, there was a new Mishnah that dealt with a number of other halachas regarding the writing of the Sota document. I'll call it that way, okay? All right, so that's what we saw. Right? And even though Yud Zayin Amud Beis was short, okay, section, you can see just from the example of the Tosafot there, that the Tosafot has a lot to comment on, okay? But I pointed out as we continue in a moment that there were a number of parallels that the Gemara was basically saying us between how the Sota document was to be written and how a Torah scroll was to be written. We saw number one, for example, that it had to be written in ink, same kind of ink. Number two, we saw another example, okay, that
It needs shit.
what? That we're going to get to that today, okay? And that we're going to see other examples, but it began to show us that there had to be certain, okay, that how it was written, it had to be written in the order, okay, that it was found. So today, as we continue, the Gemara is going to simply proceed to give us quite a number of other examples that we'll see that the parallel between writing the Sota document and the writing of Sefer Torah have a number of other parallel cases, okay? So that, I think, sort of helps us up. I do want to point out one simple thing, and that is at the end of yesterday's daf, okay, on Amud Beis, it says Katva Igeret. If it's written, someone would translate it as a letter, okay, as opposed to a sefer, all right? We need to understand, and here's where I'm going to jump into a daf. Remember that when you look at it inside a Sefer Torah, okay, you have what I'm going to say for the moment, 3 different styles of writing, okay? We have the normal style, okay, which is what I'm going to call for the moment columns. But then you have Shirat Hayam, which is written a little bit differently, okay? And then you have Ha'azinu, which is written, again, a little bit differently, even though that's in columns, okay? So we do see, okay, that because these different formats that we find in the Sefer Torah, that's why I wanted to come back, sorry, and point out again this business of Igeret, okay, between a letter, okay, and a Sefer, okay?
Does it cost the husband anything to write all this stuff?
We'll see. Okay, I haven't come across it yet in the Gemara. Okay, but actually, if you say that he's the one who's bringing the charge, shouldn't he be the one who pays the bill? Okay, all right. But as we're going to continue now on top of Yud Chet Amud Aleph with these others, we'll give other examples. All right. So, and again, remember, we're keeping in mind this parallel, okay, with the Sefer Torah, but also the fact that we do see in the Sefer Torah more than just one format. Okay. All right. Yud Chet Kadva al Shnei Dapim. Okay. What does it mean al Shnei Dapim? Okay. All right. Now, notice I'm just going to point out to Rashi here. Rashi says al Shtei Dapim, right? Okay. Kidapim shall Sefer Torah ha'asuyin amudim. Okay. So Rashi understood this as to mean, again, something that was written, okay, like in columns. Okay. In other words, instead of all written directly one above the other, maybe Pasukim 19 and 20 were written in one column, and the 21 and 22 in another column. Okay, we saw there were the 4 Psukim. Okay, what we call the first direction to the Kohen, and what I call the warning. Okay, that would be 19 and 20. And then 21 and 22 was the fact that the second section came, which was what Art Scroll and others have called the oath, okay, and the curse, okay, and then the woman's, where the direction says the woman responds, Amen, Amen.
Didn't they want to, at one point, compare it to the writing of a get?
Well, we'll see. Okay.
How's the way it came in? I don't see where
Okay.
you-
So Yud Chet Amud Aleph, top of the Amud. Kadva al Shnei Dapim. Okay, so it's another, it's written in 2 columns. We're going to accept Rashi's explanation there. Okay, that's why I pointed out, if you remember, Ha'azinu is really 2 columns still. Okay, right? What happens? Psula, that document for the Sota is invalid. Sefer Echad Amra Rachman, right? Velo Shnayim Ushlosha Svarim. Okay, in 1 and not 2 or 3. Okay, because
What is the nafkamina to that? They have to rewrite it. She doesn't get. the
it means
money.
it's invalid. It's not a valid. Okay, they would either have to rewrite it or it's not usable. If it's not usable, right, you can't go through the remainder of the process. Ktav ot echat umachak ot echat. He writes 1 letter, okay, and erases 1 letter. Okay, then further, ukatav ot echad, umachak ot echad. Okay, and erases, writes another letter and erases
by
it.
putting the water.
Exactly. In other words, he'll take it, and how does it erase? He's got to put it in. So he writes something, puts it in water. Writes something again, puts it in water. Ot echad, by the way, I'm thinking may not necessarily mean letter, but word. Okay, could also be. Right?
Ice is a letter.
Usually it's a letter, right?
Is this the stuff with Hashem's name on it that they put in?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. So what happens? Psula. It's invalid, right? Dichtiv, why? Because it's written Va'asala HaKohen et kol HaTorah Hazot. That he's written all this Torah, and I'll translate Torah here for the moment as instruction. Okay. Remember, we said that it's a script, basically. Right? By Rav. Okay, so again, we see this parallel to the Torah. Okay, by Rav, so Rava asks, Katav shtei megilot l'shtei soto. What happens if some scribe wrote 2 documents, 2, right, for 2 different women? Okay, right? Umachkan l'toch kos echad. Okay, but when the Kohen dips it, they dip both of them into the same right?
Excuse me, it's not dip. He actually erases.
He erases
He
Right.
scrapes it off
into the water. Okay, all right, all right. So what happens? Says the Gemara, "K'tiva lishma ba'inan." We say it
What's the mahu? What's the question?
mahu, right?
What is the
K'tiva lishma ba'inan. Okay, what's the status? Asks Rabba. Okay, it has to be written specifically for that woman. Okay, now that could be the parallel to get Heshi. Okay,
The
All right.
ego.
all right,
It is.
okay.
It is the smart.
Well, we're going to get to, we're going to develop this more.
When they dip in the wood, they take the actual scroll and dipping that into the wood?
No,
What are they dipping?
okay, you have this right. So what does he do? He scratches off the ink, okay, and that ink falls into the vial that contains the mixture so far of earth and water. Okay,
And Hashem's name is on there?
Yeah.
it's on that.
Wherever point is up though.
Okay, so what happens?
The original raised print.
All right, Vaha'ika. So the Gemara says, right? But what about the following situation? O Dilma ba'inin nami mechikat lishma. Or perhaps we say that the erasure has to be for each individual woman specifically,
And that doesn't happen here because you put it.
because it put it into a single container.
But
Right.
when he's erasing it, it's still her ksav.
So that's the question the Gemara's got to follow up on, right? That's why it asks the question. Ve'im tims, right? Ve'im timsalomar ba'inin nami mechika lishma. And if you're going to say, as Chaim just says to ask us, that we require that the erasure has to be done for that particular woman, right? Machkan b'shnei kosot v'chazar v'irvan. Okay, if he erases each of them into a single vial, into a single container, and mixes them, mahu, what's the situation? Mechika lishma ba'inan. Do we say that in this case the erasure has to be required for that particular individual woman? Vaha'ika, and we have that in this case, even though it was to a single, each erasure.
Afterwards.
Right,
but it's
even though
initial
each
was-
erasure was done for each woman,
Right.
but the ink went into from both documents, went into a single vial, a single container. O Dilma ha lavdida kashtia. But here we might say she's not drinking that which is designated for her. Okay, vaha lavdida kashtia, and she too she's not drinking for that which is designated for her. Okay, so we would therefore seem to determine that the shtia also might have to be lishma. Okay, that's right. Okay, ve'im timsalama, and then again, if you want to say ha lavdi da kashtia, here this one that was hers, she may not have drunk. Vaha lavdi da kashtia. And here, this one also for her, particularly, she didn't drink. Chazar v'chelkan, if you then took this single vial, the
Which is
single
a mixture of
container,
both of
which,
them.
right, is to had them, two of them mixed, and now re-separated into two separate containers, mahu, what's the situation then? Yesh breira, do we say it retroactively? It's going to work.
What
Okay,
goes into one
Right.
cup is what really
Okay.
what should be there.
all right, so that retroactively, what she's
Okay.
drinking
Is
would have been
hers.
hers, and the other one retroactively would have been hers. Okay, or ein breira, or do we say there is no retroactive action under these circumstances? Okay, and by the way, remember, I believe it's Art Scroll that points out that normally with a Torah mandated item, there is no break. Okay, so that already tells us an issue, no retroaction. Okay,
In this
Take 'em.
case, the scrolls are identical, there's no names on
right,
them.
right.
Writing's identical, so.
But nevertheless, okay, but nevertheless, we're going to say that the text says Ha'isha Hazot, Okay, we're going to designate that means it's the Shema. Okay, so what happens, Teku? We have no answer. So Rava goes on. By Rava, he asks again. Okay, what happens? Heshke basiv. If he has her drink it through palm fiber, palm bast, mahu, right? Well, no, we're going to get the next one is more like a straw. Okay, all right. Bishfoferet, that's like a tube or like a straw. Okay, what happens? Mahu, what's the situation then? Derech shtiya b'chach. Do we say that that's an acceptable means of drinking it? Okay, or ein derech shtiya b'chach. Or is that not an acceptable means of drinking it? Because why? Because either the fiber or the straw may eliminate certain may allow drinking the water, but not the earth or not the ink. Okay? In other words, it would filter out something, right? Teku, we have no answer here.
This must be the origin of the soda straw.
All right, well. Ba'e Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi is going to ask a question. All right. Now, notice, Nishpachu mehen v'nishtayru mehen. Some of the water, okay, got spilled out. By the way, notice Rav Ashi doesn't ask the question whether it's in two separate cups or one cup. Okay, so all he's asking in either case, I'm suggesting, if some of the water got spilled out, and it's not the complete amount. And remember, we saw earlier in Machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and others as to how much water there had to be. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda was the minimalist, we said, by saying it only had to be a revis. Okay, whereas the others said it had to be, if I remember, chatzi log. Okay, so there's a bit of difference there in the amount of water. Okay. So if you're makpid like Chazal on its chatzi log and some water is spilled out, is it going to be invalid? Okay.
Just, Rob raised some question, but there was no resolution, right?
No. Teku means precisely that there's no resolution. Okay. Mahu, what's the question there? If there's some spilled out but some still left in, what's the status? Mahu, Teku, no resolution. Amar Rabbi Zera, says Rabbi Zera. Says Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav, Shnei Shavuot Amurot B'Sota. Okay, Lama. Why do we have two oaths?
What if she drinks half the cup and then confesses?
Ah, good question. Good question. All right. Okay. Right. So that would be an interesting situation, but the Gemara doesn't seem to ask that question. Okay. So two oaths. Why do we say we have two oaths? All right. We're going to deal with it. Lama. Echat kodem shenimchaka Megillah, ve'echat lachar shenimchaka. One, according to the Gemara, is before it is erased the ink into the water. The other is after the ink is erased into the water. But this is challenged. Matkif la Rava. Rava challenges it by saying, Travaihu kodim shenimchaka Megillah k'tiva. No, but both of them erased, right? What happens? Kodim shenim, right? So what happens? They're both erased at the point, right? Shenimchaka Megillah k'tavat. That's already been written. Ela Amar Rava. So Rava wants to give an alternative explanation to why there are two oaths. Echat shvua sheyesh ima Allah. One is that, in other words, that there is actually where she's going to refer to the curse. Echat shvua she'ein ima Allah. And the other is where there is an oath where there is no curse. Okay. Now, Hechidami Shvuah Sheyeshima Allah. How is it possible that we have an oath where there is a curse? Okay. Amar Rav Amram, says Rav Amram Amar Rav. Okay. And he's going to cite the pasuk, right? Mashbi'eni alayach This is what the Kohen, remember, is saying to her. Okay, so this would be what I would call the warning or the first statement, right? Verse 19, Shelo nitmei, that if you do not become tmeah, right, etc. She'im nitmeit yava'u beich, and that if, so in other words, they've abbreviated.
That's the Ola. If you become Tameh, the punishment will come to you.
Okay,
That's
the
Ola.
second part.
Right.
Okay, that's the second part. So that's really verse 19 that we saw. Okay, what I was right now. So what happens? Amar Rava. No, he says, what is it? Allah lechudekaima ushvua lechudekaima. No, the curse by itself stands, and the oath by itself stands. Right? So he wants to give an alternative explanation to Rav Amram in the name of Rav. Ela Amar Rava says as follows. What is he saying? Mashbieni olaich she'im nitmeit yava'u beich. I'm saying an oath. What? That if I did become defiled, Tame'ah, it will enter me. In other words, I will get sick and die ultimately. Okay? All right? So what's the point? So what's the second one? Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi. Ella Ika Shavua Leka. He says, saying it that way, yes, you have one regarding this the curse, but you don't have one
Sure.
regarding the oath. So Rav Ashi is going to again give an alternative. Ela Amar Rav Ashi, he says, what? Mashbi'eni alayich shelo nitmeit. I'm making it the vow. So that's the oath that I did not become tme'ah. Ve'im nitmeit yavo al baich. And if I do become a tme'ah, okay, then it will enter me and do its thing and ultimately kill me.
Did this ever happen? That actually very,
That they actually, I mean, in other words, did the result,
in history?
okay, did the result actually come about? Okay, I understand that, again, this is only me, okay, that ultimately she would have, if she would become pregnant, she would have a miscarriage, okay? And as a result of the miscarriage, become so ill that she would die. Okay,
And this actually happened. In history.
I don't know. Okay, all right, all right. In other words, where, for example, we do have cases where the Gemara points out a situation like Ben Sorer Umoreh, and then the Gemara tells us never happened. Okay, but on the other hand, I could raise the following question. Okay, if elsewhere in the Gemara we seem to find a situation of why did they stop the Sota procedure? Because it happened too frequently. Which would seem, so the Gemara hinted that that was why it got stopped. If that's the case, it had to be implying that it did happen. Okay.
Shoot the dice.
Right. Okay, our new Mishnah continues. Al-Mahi Omeret Omein Amen. At the end, verse 22, there in the section, it says, she says Amen twice. Okay. So the Mishnah is going to tell us, wants to clarify, why does she say Amen twice? Now, I will tell you, when I was preparing this, Art Scroll went in its notes in some detail to what's called Gilgul Shavua, okay? That one could, once you're requiring, and this we learned it
Literally,
here.
Gilgal means rolling.
Yes,
So they-
right. So once we roll, okay. It would appear that Art Scroll is suggesting that Sota with this double Amen is the origin of the procedure of Gilgul Shavua. And this concept or this ability to do this act then became carried over to other kinds of situations. For example, in Dinei Mamonot, in monetary issues, where once you require a person to make an oath, you can then require them to make an oath on another element or another aspect of that same situation. Okay?
Does it have to be related?
It would appear that it would have to be related.
What's an example?
In regards to,
How many we don't know yet?
we're going to see. That's what the Gemara is going to discuss. Okay? Okay, so I want to introduce that here because the Gemara is initially going to raise the question, if she's saying Amen twice, okay, could it be, I'm going to raise it as a question and then we'll jump back in. Could it be that one time Amen is to indicate the oath and one time Amen is to indicate the curse? Okay, or are we going to say that the double Amen refers to other things? Because if you're going to accept Art Scroll's suggestion that this is the basis of Gilgul Shavua, that once you're making her take an oath under her, regarding her current status of being faithful or unfaithful, could I then require her to make an oath on other situations? For example, on the situation before she married him. Okay? Or if it's okay,
Or a Yavama.
okay, or I'll take another case. If it's a second marriage, okay, could I require her, let's say, and she was widowed from the first husband, but now it's a second marriage, and the second husband is considering whether she was unfaithful. If I'm requiring her to make a vow, or okay, for the second marriage, maybe I should require her to make a vow in her status between the time she was widowed and before she married me.
It's double jeopardy, actually, because you actually, you're being accused of unfaithfulness right now with this man.
Yeah,
But if you were unfaithful before, why should it
Okay.
matter?
right. So we're going to see that the Gemara explores this kind of situation. Ultimately, that's how the Gemara is going to look at it the same way you just did. Can there be a situation where the same woman would have to be tested twice? Okay, so now we understand where the Gemara is going to take us. Let's go in now. Okay, so back to our Mishnah. Alma omeret, he omeret, amen, amen. What does she say the amen twice for? Amen al ha'ala, because says our Mishnah, she says it once for the curse. Amen al hashvua, and once for the oath. Amen
Why
meish.
did they mention the curse first?
Okay, well, because that's the stronger issue. Okay, her oath is that, something will happen. I understand that from this quote, what I call warning, okay, that something will happen to me. And I accept that statement. The curse is what's really going to happen, the actual thing. Okay, so now the Mishnah continues. Amen meish zeh, amen meish acher. Okay, maybe she says one for one man, for the current husband, and one for another man, the lover, the paramour. Okay, maybe that's the case. Amen shalosh satiti, arusa unesua. Or maybe she's saying amen once, that I did not stray, so to speak, when I was before married and then after marriage. Okay, or let's take another example as we go to the next Amud. V'shomeret yabam uknusa, or maybe when I was widowed from my husband who never had children, and I was waiting for my yavam, I was a yavama, and then immediately married. Okay, we did the yibum, right, in that situation. Or amen shalom nitmeti, I say amen that I never became defiled. Okay, Ve'im nitmeti yavo bi. And were I to become defiled, it would then do its impact on me. Okay? So these are all suggestions why she could be saying Amen twice. Okay? Rabbi Meir now says, Rabbi Meir Omer. Okay, remember Rabbi Meir is always Tanakama if it seems to be a Stam mission. So that's why we say Rabbi Meir, Amen, Shalonit Meti. So he adds, she's saying Amen, that she did not become defiled.
In the past.
All right, exactly. Past. Amen, Shalom et Amen. And I say Amen, that I will not become defiled in the future. Okay? Hakol Shavim. That means everybody is in agreement. She'ein matne ima, that we do not, and I'm going to translate matne here is make her stipulate with an oath. Okay, that satisfies both the Art Scroll and the Koren explanations. Okay, that we do not make her stipulate with an oath. Lo al kodim shetit ares, not on before that she became engaged or betrothed, right? Velo al acher shetit garesh, and nor on after she became divorced. Okay? So the the Mishnah goes on. Nistara le'echad v'nitmeit v'achar kach hechzira, right? She secluded herself with a particular man, right? And then she became Tme'ah, right? And what happens? Nevertheless, the husband then took her back. He divorced her, but then took her back. What happens? Lo hayamat ne'ima. He is not able to stipulate an oath with her under those situations. Okay? So in other words, this is the same woman. He took her back. She may have had an affair with him, right? So they were divorced. Then he takes her back. He can't make her take an oath back on retroactively. Okay, right? V'zeh haklal, and this is the rule. Kol shetiba'el v'lo hayta asura lo. Any situation where she may have had sexual relations, but she did not become forbidden to that husband, right? Lo hayam matne ima. He is not able to stipulate her with an oath.
First he has to divorce her and then.
No, doesn't have to divorce.
He doesn't have to.
He could, in other words, okay,
He happened to divorce her.
if he, in other words,
And then
he
she
could
had an
choose
affair
to
with
divorce, right? In other words, he could let,
That's okay.
Right.
yeah,
That would be
She-
okay.
Having an affair with somebody after her divorce does not prohibit her
Right.
to her husband, the old husband. If
Right.
he were to remarry her.
Okay.
right.
But he
No,
must divorce her?
no,
No,
no, in other words,
If
if he divorced,
He can forgive
she
her,
was,
he doesn't-
X was married, Mr. X was married to Mrs. X,
Right.
right?
And she
What
was-
happens? He suspects that she had an affair with Mr. Y.
Right.
Okay, he decides, instead of going through the whole business, he's gonna divorce her. He
Then he would have to
chooses to
sue.
divorce.
Right.
Doesn't, he's not required, but he chooses to divorce her.
Right.
Okay, for some reason then, afterwards he decides to take her back. Okay, now he cannot retroactively
Do this.
force her to go through the SOTA situation. Okay, for his previous suspicions with Y when they were married earlier. But let's say, coming back to what
Not when they
Avrami
were
is
there.
pointing us.
When they were not there.
Well, I'm going to get to that. I didn't get there yet, Ruben. Okay, but let's say what happens. Again, Mr. X was married to Mrs. X. He divorces her. Okay, now she's a grusha. While she's a grusha, she happens to have an affair with Mr. Y. Okay, but Mr. X, he may or may not know about that affair, but he takes her back. Okay? Now he might hear, okay, that she had, during that time, she had an affair with Mr. Y. He cannot bring her to a sota situation at this point for the time that she had the affair with Y when she was a grusha.
There's another reason, he didn't warn her not to have it with them.
No, she was permitted.
She was allowed to have an affair at that point, she wasn't married.
She's not forbidden to him. She's not his wife.
I understand.
Even,
And
even,
anyway, you have to actually warn her
Right.
against a certain man.
right,
So for two reasons.
But he can't warn her, they weren't married
He
then.
didn't warn
right, so let's say in this situation, where she has a grusha, she had an affair with somebody. and
Yeah.
then the first husband remarried her,
Right,
and then they got into a thing, he warned her about somebody, she's gonna go through the sota process,
yeah,
right? So in the shvua, right, that shvua, which is on whatever that other man was that he warned her about.
yeah,
Right, he cannot also impose on before they, while she was a grusha, he can't impose the shvua on that.
Yeah, but even if he suspects, since he didn't warn her
No,
against
but-
a certain man, he can't.
Yeah, but we see from
Right.
Mishnah that the shvua can be imposed while she was in Arusa, after she was in the Suha, even if she weren't warned. Once he got her into a situation with Sota where she was warned about a certain person, and she has to make the shvua about that person,
person,
that shvua can also be imposed on other situations where if it were true that she had an affair, it would
that's,
become forbidden.
that's
to
the
us
whole issue of the Gilgul Shavua.
About somebody.
About someone.
Right,
Not
Right.
necessarily
I
about
understand.
this.
right, okay,
That's
So
what the
can-
Mishnah said.
That can affect anybody, any official.
Right.
with
Amen
anybody
for
else.
each
Right,
zeh.
so is that
and
one?
Amen v'ish acher,
Right,
right,
as long as he warned her about a certain man.
Right.
right, okay? Now, what happens? Notice now, we're gonna now get to that other element. Amar Rav Himnuna, according to Rav Himnuna, okay, one of the parts of the Mishnah said, Shomeret Yabam, that the woman whose husband died without children is Aviyavama. She's waiting now for her Yavam to do either Yibum or Chalitza. What happens if she has an affair then with somebody? Shezinta. All right. Asurali Yabama. He claims, Rabbi Nuna, that she is forbidden to her future Yabam. Okay. Because of this act, right?
Yeah, you can't be Yibum.
Right? In other words, you have to do Chalitza.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Mimai, what's his basis? Okay. Midikatani, he says, since our Mishnah taught, Shomeret Yabam Uknusa, okay, that she's waiting for her Yabam and he brings her into marriage. Okay. So what happens? Now, Aleph Bet here, I believe stands for I Amarta Bishlema. Okay. If you're going to say Asira Mishum Hachi, that she is therefore forbidden to this Yabam, right? Matna Bahada. Okay, he can stipulate that she needed to would give an oath. Okay. Ella I Amarta Lo Asira. But if you're going to say just the opposite of Rav Nun, that she is not forbidden to this Yavam, even though she had the affair, because she is in a, I'm going to call it for the moment, limbo situation, not terribly unlike a grusha, perhaps. Okay, that's the parallel I want to draw.
There is the concept of the Zika, but there wasn't.
Right, and the Zika, depending on how strong you felt. Remember when we learned it, some felt Zika was very strong. Some felt, okay.
What's the Zika?
It's the bond that a Yavama has to her potential Yavam. Okay, to one of her brothers. Okay, all right. So what happens? Ella I amart lo asira. Hechimat nebahada. If you don't say, okay, that she now is forbidden to the Yavam, how can he make her stipulate with a vow, with an oath? Okay, vahatnan. And aren't we taught in a Mishnah, Zeh haklal, this is the general principle, Kol she'ilu tiba'el, one who has relations, velo tehe asura lo, and she is not then forbidden to him, namely, to that man, okay? Lo hayamat ne'ima, he is not able to cause her to stipulate a vow, an oath. Amrei b'ma'arava, and they said in the west, namely Eretz Yisrael, lit hilchata karav himnuna. The law is not like Rav Himnuna. That's why I compared it to the example of, even though she's a Yavama and she has Zikah, it may be closer to the example of the Grusha. Okay? Okay. Ela ha tikatan. But nevertheless, here our Mishnah does teach Shomeret Yabam Uknusa as an example, that she's waiting for her Yabam and he brings her under the chuppah, right? Ha mani. According to whom is that then? That would seem to imply that they would agree with Rav Hamnuna's view. Okay? Rabbi, that if she committed an affair while she was waiting for her Yabam, he could not, all right? He would have to do chalitza and could not do yibum. Okay? In other words, he would not be able to marry. Okay? What? It's Rabbi Akiva. The Amar says Rabbi Akiva, Ein kiddushin tofsin, that the marriage is not a valid marriage, right? Bechai ve'lavin, with regards, interesting by the way, whether some texts don't put a period after tofsin, others don't put a period after tofsin. Bechai ve'lavin. So Rabbi Akiva is basically saying, if there is a lav, a negative prohibition in regards to that woman, okay, he says that marriage is not a valid, and one goes ahead, that's not a valid marriage. Okay? Umashve la ki erva, and he compares it, okay, to erva, to a forbidden marriage. Right? Okay, which is right, punishable by cause. Okay? By Rabbi Yirmiyah. And so Rabbi Yirmiyah now asks, Mahu sheyitne adam al nisuin harishonim. Okay, so what about in regards to a person who's in a second marriage? Okay, can he force the woman regarding a stipulation of an oath to a prior marriage? Okay.
With him.
Okay,
With
and
the same
that's what we're going to get to. Okay, and we're going to say, certainly it wouldn't apply to another man, but it could certainly apply to him. If he had married her, divorced her, took her back, can he then stipulate an oath for her if he thought she did something with somebody during that first marriage? Al nusiye achiv. Or what about in the situation of Yibum, the marriage with the brother? What happens? Could the Yavam force her to make an oath if he thought she may have been unfaithful to his brother, to whom she was married first? Okay, under that situation, Mahu, what's the case? Tashma, listen to the following bright. Zehaklau, this is the general principle. Kol shetibael velo tehe asura lo, if she has sexual relations and doesn't become forbidden to him, to that same man, as we are understanding lo here now, lo hayam matne ima, he is not able to stipulate an oath for her. Ha asura, which would imply if she did become forbidden, okay, hachanami dematne, here she would be able to stipulate the oath, shmamina, and indeed that's what we learn from this. Okay, now we come back to Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir Omer, He said one, Omein Shalom Itmeti Bechule. Okay, that she says Amen twice, one of which was that she did not become defiled. Tanya, and a Braita teaches, Lo Kashe Amar Rabbi Meir Amen Shelo Etma. It's not that Rabbi Meir is saying that she didn't become defiled. She'im Titma Mayim Bodkim Otam Me'achshav, that it implies that were she to have become defiled, the water would examine her from this point on. Ella, rather, L'kshet Titma, but if it was to be, were she to become defiled in the future, namely, it's as if the water would start acting later on. Okay, Mayim Ma'ararin Ota Ubodkin Ota. One translation was that the water would gurgle, another was that the water would destabilize her, okay, and eventually examine her and do its
She would die.
right, do its negative impact and die.
So in other
How
words,
could
she
you
was-
swear
if
about
she-
something that's gonna happen in the future?
Yeah, if she was innocent of this guy.
Storing it up for
And
the
in the
future.
future she has an affair, the water would get to her?
That's
Later.
That's how somebody is trying to understand Rabbi Meir's statement.
Yeah. doesn't make
Why?
sense.
Because we saw, remember, Rabbi Meir was challenged where they said, fine, you say that applies to the curse, but it doesn't apply to the oath. But she said amen twice. So therefore, how do we understand Rabbi Meir? We have to say he has to talk about two different situations. One where she wasn't defiled yet. One was when she could be defiled in the future. Okay?
I guess I can swear on the future.
So the implication is theoretically arguing that the water could still take effect. Okay?
It's a
Delayed reaction. Okay? So what happens? As a result, Rav Ashi comes along with another interpretation. Maybe he's trying to clarify what Rabbi Meir meant. Okay? Ba'i Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi asks, Mahu sheyidne Adam al nisi'in ha'achronim? What about the person who might stipulate an oath with his wife for a later marriage? Okay, or a second marriage, a later marriage. Hashta miha lo asirale. Do we say here, okay, that if it's a second marriage, she is not forbidden to him? Oh, right?
He hasn't
Why?
divorced her.
First marriage.
Okay.
They're still living in the.
Al
He's talking
nisuin
about-
ha'achronim, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two options. Option number one is it's a remarriage.
Right.
Okay, so if I argue it's a remarriage, I could say maybe he should be able to force her to an oath. Option number two, it's a second marriage and it's not to the same man, right?
No, it's the same man.
Okay,
And he married her, he divorced her, and then he's gonna remarry her. So he wants to know, can he make he must shvu on her, right? For the 1 second, on the Nisuin Achrenim. Can we do it on the second? I'm gonna be master you now to make a shvu on
okay,
when I remarry you,
okay.
right? Now,
Wow.
if she's Nizana when she remarries him, and the second marriage, their second marriage together, right? If she was Nizana on the first marriage, that didn't do anything for the second.
Okay,
marriage.
well, that's my point. That's why I'm saying, I think the Gemara says, when it says Nisuin ha'achronim, a later marriage,
It's
it could-
his own.
well, I'm saying it could be either one. Okay, because then certainly if it's a later marriage and it's this, and it's really a remarriage, it's one thing like you're saying. Okay, but if it's a second marriage and it wasn't a remarriage,
So not another man.
yeah,
Not
Yeah, but
his
that's not-
husband.
that's the whole point.
That's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Mahush
Shidne Adam al Nisuin ha'achronim.
And
You're
somebody else
reading,
cannot-
no, you're
all of a
reading
sudden
Adam
make a
as the
shul on
same
some-
man. You're reading Adam as the same man.
Right.
Okay.
How can one- how can-
And I'm not reading it that way. That's
How
all.
can-
That's
how
what the
can
word
one
says.
husband
That's
impose a
the
shua
words of the
for
word.
a
That's
lack of
part of the
faithfulness
question.
to
You're
another?
right. That's part of the question. That's why Rav Ashi is asking the question. That's why it's a double entendre here. Okay? So what happens? He says, that's why he says, Hashta miha lo asirale. Do we say here that she's not forbidden to him? Because that would be if it was a different man.
In the first.
Okay,
In the
or do we
first marriage,
say-
she's not forbidden?
Right.
It-
But if it's a remarriage, can we still say that she's not forbidden to him?
You're right, because the Mishnah said that the only time you can impose the shua if it was a situation where she would become forbidden to him,
Right.
right? But if he's saying, I'm only giving you a shua for when I remarry you.
But he doesn't say that to her in advance.
It's very, that's what the question is, can he do that? Can we say
Okay,
that
I
in the
don't,
first marriage, she hasn't done anything, she's not.
I don't
forbidden to him?
okay, let's see. Oh, Dilma, perhaps, Zimnin de Megareshla, or now he's getting to, this is Rav Ashi, he flips, he's doing, his question I felt was under both situations. Or do you say, no, what we're talking about is a remarriage, that he divorced her, okay? Zimnin de Megareshla, Vahada Mahader, and then afterwards he takes her back. La, what happens under that situation? So I think Rav Ashi's question is in both cases, both a remarriage situation and a non-remarriage situation when it said that. Okay, anyway, Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Hakol Shavin, everybody agrees. Shelo hayamat ne'ima, lo al kodim shetitares, all right? V'lo al achar shetitgaresh. Everybody agrees, right, that you cannot force her to stipulate the oath when it's before she become engaged, whether that was for a new man or a remarriage. V'lo al achar shetitgaresh, or after the fact that she was divorced. Okay, namely, nistara le'achad v'nitma'a, if she secluded herself with one and became tme'ah, right? After the divorce, right? V'achar kach yachzirana, and afterwards he takes her back. Lo hayamatne, that he is not then able to force her to stipulate the oath. Okay, now, ha yachzirana v'titma, but that's the Gemara saying. But here he took her back and she became tme'ah. All right, what about that? Hachanami, here too, dematne. Here too, we learned that through the Braita, Shmamina, and therefore in that case, the Gemara is telling us, yes, he can force her to stipulate the oath in that situation. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan. Now we get to a new Braita.
Does
Okay?
he have to warn her first?
No, because he could have warned her he could have warned her during the time of the first marriage.
Yeah, but she would have to sin with the same guy.
It's possible. Okay. After all, don't we have
It's the Shema.
elsewhere we have a situation, I believe, I don't remember the exact pasuk, but the Torah says, right, that if she was unfaithful during the marriage, he divorces her, she's not permitted to marry the paramour. I believe, I don't remember the exact wording in the pasuk, but I'm pretty sure I remember a pasuk that says, right, deoraita, if she was unfaithful during the marriage and the man divorces her, according to the Torah, she's not permitted to marry the paramour, the one she was unfaithful. Asur labol, asur laba'al, exactly. Okay,
What's the reason for that? We don't know.
she's getting rewarded for her unfaithfulness. Okay, I remember that distinctly because I actually had to refuse to do a wedding under those circumstances. Okay. Okay. Shma mina. Okay.
No matter what they pay.
Right. All right. Fortunately, I think they were knowledgeable enough, not even really to, I would have had to refuse. They didn't ask me to perform. Okay. Tana Rabbanan. Zo Torat HaKinamot. This is the instruction of the issue of jealousies. All right. Notice I'm saying instruction singular, jealousies plural. Okay. All right. Milamed Shahisha Shota Vishoneh teaches us that a woman can drink and have to repeat the sota examination a second time. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Zot. It says this. She'ein ha'isha shota v'shonah, implying this, not just this woman, but this particular situation, this particular case. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda, ma'aseh v'ha'id lefanenu nechunya chofer shichin. We once, says Rabbi Yehuda, had a real case where Nechunya, who was the ditch digger, okay, what does that mean? Basically, he's the one who helped dig wells and places for water for the pilgrims when they came to Eretz Yisrael. Okay? However, Art Scroll has a long note there that says can't be the same guy, okay, before Rabbi Yehuda, because he was a couple generations later. Okay? Anyway, Shaha'isha Shota V'shona, that the same woman drank and had to repeat it a second time. V'kibalnu eduto b'shnei anashim, and we accepted his testimony when it was brought before us by two people. Aval lo be'ish echad, but not by a single witness. Okay, two men, two different men.
Anoshim means two husbands.
Two men, right? Okay, but not with the same man. So, in other words, it would imply that it wouldn't work in terms of a remarriage, but it would work in terms of a marriage and then a separate marriage. Okay. V'chachamim omrim, but the sages say, ein ha'isha shota v'shona. A woman does not repeat the sota examination, bein be'ish echad, whether it's with one man, in other words, one husband, the same guy, remarriage, right? Bein b'shnei anashim, or whether it's two separate husbands.
You can only do it once.
It's a different opinion.
Right? V'tanakama nami hichti. V'tanakama, it's also written zot, this. V'rabanan batrai, and the later rabbis, what do they say? Nami hakativ Torat, but it's also written Torat, a single instruction. Amar Rava, says Rava, be'ish echad u'bo'el echad. We're talking about one husband and one paramour. The kuli alma lo pligi, that everybody is not disagreeing. The ein ha'isha shota v'shona, that they don't, she does not drink and repeat. Why? Dichtiv zot, because it's written zot, this. In other words, we said this case. I'm just going to do a little bit, right? B'shnei anashim, but with two husbands, v'shnei bo'alin, and two separate paramours, the kuli alma lo pligi dahisha shota v'shona. That she does drink and has to go through the sota a second time. Ktiv Torah. Why? Because it's written the instruction. Okay, so we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay, on Yotet, we'll finish this parak and we'll start the new one.
So if a woman suspects her husband and warns him, he doesn't have to go through this.
Okay, no, if the husband, okay,
No, the other way around.
I understand. If the husband himself is in any way guilty of infidelity, we're already told that the test doesn't work. So it does. So
It
if
doesn't work for her. I see.
it won't work for her,
I see.
okay. So if she had a suspicion that he was unfaithful, and he then claims her, she's going to say, "Give me my divorce. Give me the divorce, Okay,
I don't have to take the test.
okay, I don't have to take the test. Okay? And that, so she won't get a ksuba. Okay? That's the very worst that she would have to do.
So she would not even get a suit in the second one.
Or other things. All right?